Hey there, welcome to the Friendship Center. My name's Eric, I'm the education coordinator here, and today I'd like to chat with you about some of the typical behaviors we as advocates see happening in abusive relationships. In case you've forgotten or you're not familiar with what we do here, the Friendship Center is a community based nonprofit advocacy organization, and we provide services to folks who've been impacted in any way by domestic violence, sexual violence, or stalking. We're located in Helena, Montana, and we serve Lewis and Clark, Broadwater, and Jefferson counties. I know a lot of folks watching this probably are very familiar with abusive behaviors in intimate partner relationships, but we as advocates also know that there are lots of people out there in the community who aren't sure what abuse actually looks like. And this video is intended to, first of all, validate the experiences of victims and survivors of abuse, but to also provide some education to others in the community who might be able to offer some support to victims and survivors of abuse. This video is for you if you have a loved one or a friend or a coworker even that you're concerned about. I want to be able to offer you some things to look out for so that if you see these behaviors happening, if you see these things affecting your friend or your coworker or your loved one, you can offer some informed concern to that person and hopefully help them to find a safe way to exit that relationship and move on with healing from the abuse that they've experienced. Today, I'd like to take a look at a tool that was developed by advocates in Duluth, Minnesota many years ago. And this tool is called the Power and Control Wheel. This is something that we as advocates often show to clients here at the Friendship Center that helps them be able to express to us what it is they're experiencing in their unsafe or unhealthy relationship. When clients are able to tell us exactly what is going on for them, we're better able to strategize with them about what we can do to find safety for that client. As an educator, I find the Power and Control Wheel to be a very useful tool for educating the general public about what is often happening in abusive relationships. We'll look today at some typical behaviors that we see in abusive relationships that allow offending partners to maintain power and control over their victim or survivor partner. What I'll do is I'll show you the Power and Control Wheel as a whole. We'll put it on the screen, and I know that this tool looks like a lot. There's a lot of writing here, and it can be pretty intimidating to look at. So what we'll do during the course of this video is we'll break down these behaviors into small sections, and we'll take a look at those individual sections, and we'll talk through what you as a person caring about other people can maybe look for to help victims and survivors of domestic violence. It's a common misconception that domestic violence is only physical in nature. We often hear from people that they maybe haven't been physically harmed by a partner, and so therefore they're not sure that they are victims of domestic violence. The truth, however, is that domestic violence really is not one particular behavior, but it's a pattern of behavior. Domestic violence is defined as a pattern of coercive and controlling behavior. That behavior can be physical in nature, with physical assault like slapping, hitting, kicking, punching, biting, and use of weapons. But we know that domestic violence often, for many victims, perhaps most victims, frequently, if not always, takes the form of what we would refer to as emotional abuse. Emotional abuse, sometimes called psychological abuse or verbal abuse, are things that an offending partner does to their victim partner to keep them controlled without having to use physical violence. Those are the things I'd like to talk with you about today, is those aspects of emotional abuse that affect victims in abusive relationships. Let's start by talking about isolation. This is typically the first and perhaps the most powerful thing that abusive partners do to gain and maintain control over the person they're in a relationship with. Isolation can look a lot of different ways, and we could be talking about physical or geographical isolation, But more frequently, we're concerned about social isolation. Isolation in abusive relationships typically looks like the offending partner trying to control what the victim does, where they go, who they spend time with, perhaps the content that they consume, maybe how they dress or how they talk, maybe how frequently they see people. This can look a lot of different ways, but the purpose of this is to allow the offending partner to be the only influence on the victim partner. If the offending partner is the only influence in the life of their victim, they're far more likely to be able to maintain control over that victim's thoughts and actions. Abusive partners often justify this isolation with feelings of jealousy or feelings of concern for what their victim partner is experiencing outside of the relationship. This could look like suggesting that certain people don't actually care about the victim, or suggesting that certain people want to do the victim harm, and therefore the offending partner takes on the role of a savior or the one person that a victim partner can depend on and to count on. Isolation is an extremely powerful tool for offending partners because it keeps victims and survivors from receiving support outside of their relationship. Once they've lost connection with friends and family members, they're far less likely to hear from those people that maybe they deserve something better in a relationship. Or maybe those friends and family members of the victim are concerned and want to offer some support to the victim. That becomes a lot more challenging when the offending partner has cut off all connection between the victim and outside support networks. Emotional abuse includes things like name calling and put downs. This could include humiliation of the victim partner. This could include playing mind games or gaslighting the victim partner. Emotional abuse really can simply be thought of as the attempts of an abusive partner to make the victim partner feel like they don't deserve to be treated well, to damage their self esteem, and to make them feel like they won't find love or connection or perhaps even safety outside of the relationship with the abusive partner. Emotional abuse often includes other actions on the part of the offending partner. And sometimes those actions would look like coercion or intimidation and threats. And most of us are probably familiar with what those words mean. But in the context of intimate partner relationships, coercion often looks like pressuring that partner to do something or to go along with something that the offending partner wants. And coercion can take many different forms. It could be simply pressuring someone until they give in. It could be threatening to cause them or something or someone they care about some harm if they don't give in. It could be threatening to blackmail them as far as maybe telling secrets or sharing photos or video material of a private nature. And oftentimes, coercion and intimidation and threats go hand in hand. Intimidation and threats are simply anything that makes a victim partner afraid. This could be the offending partner specifically threatening to harm that victim partner or to harm someone or something the victim cares about. This could also be the offending partner threatening them with a weapon or displaying weapons, which often implies to the victim that they are in danger. Intimidation in abusive relationships often looks destructive. The offender might break things or damage things or throw things or threaten to destroy things that the victim partner cares about. In abusive relationships, the offender often threatens to leave the victim. And while it might sound counterintuitive, the victim oftentimes cares about the offending partner and wants to be in a relationship with them. So that threat to leave actually often has some effect on the victim. Threats in abusive relationships can also take the form of threatening to call the police on the victim for something they did, or threatening to take the victim to court, maybe civil court, to accomplish something that the offender wants. This could be a threat to call immigration services on a non American citizen, or a threat to call child protective services in the case of the victim as a parent. Offending partners also often use coercion and threats to force the victim to do illegal things, or at least immoral things that the victim doesn't want to do, but they do it because they're afraid of the offending partner. It's also really important to keep in mind the fact that offenders often threaten to take their own lives, to die by suicide. And this is a really powerful threat for many victims because, yes, there is abuse happening, and yes, the victim probably wants the abuse to stop, but many victims actively love and care about their offending partner and don't wish for them to die. So the suicide threat is a very powerful way for offenders to keep victims participating in the relationship or to force victims to do things that they don't want to do. The idea of economic abuse is very complicated. Economics involve a lot of different bits and pieces of our lives, and we could spend a long time talking about economic or financial abuse, but I'll make it really, really simple for the purpose of this short video. When I say economic abuse, what I'm really talking about is access to resources. We all need to be able to access certain resources in order to make it through our daily existence. And in abusive relationships, oftentimes the offending partner is the one who controls access to resources. Resources might look like a safe place to live. They might look like money in the bank or in the pocket of the victim available for spending as the victim sees fit. Access to resources might include things like transportation and the ability to get places such as to work or to school. This might be access to transportation for the purpose of taking kids to school or helping family members or something like that. Economic abuse can also look like forcing the victim to earn money, but not allowing the victim to then use that money. Or it could look like an offending partner preventing the victim from making money and therefore having financial freedom. Economic abuse could also include things such as the offending partner interfering with the work that their victim partner is doing, or perhaps the victim partner wants to pursue education and the offending partner doesn't allow for that to happen. Economic abuse can also look like a poorer use of credit. Perhaps they force their victim to obtain a credit card, and then the offending partner uses that card but doesn't allow the victim to use that card. Or perhaps the offending partner runs up a bunch of debt in the name of both partners in the relationship, and then that debt affects the victim partner negatively when they weren't the one that was utilizing it. Economic abuse can be very, very complicated, but really the best way to remember it and to recognize it if you see it happening to someone you care about is to really just think about, do partners in a relationship have equal ability to access the resources they need to make it through their day and to plan for their future? Unfortunately, in abusive relationships, children often become a tool to be leveraged by the offending partner. If there are children present in the household, or if the victim has children, or perhaps the victim and the offending partner have children together, that is oftentimes another tool for the offending partner to use to control the victim partner. Using children to manipulate or to cause harm to a victim can look a lot of different ways. An offending partner might make the victim feel guilty about their methods of parenting, or might constantly tell the victim that they're a bad parent, or an absent parent, or not a good parent, or whatever. We've already mentioned the fact that offending partners might threaten to call child welfare services on the victim, and that's part of using children as a tool to keep victims in line as well. Post-separation, offenders who share custody with victims might also use children to relay messages to the victim, or they might use exchange of custody of the children for visitation to harass or intimidate the victim. Offending partners might also try to turn the children against the victim parent. This might look like putting bad thoughts about the victim parent in the heads of young children, or talking poorly about the victim parent when they're not around, or blaming things on the victim parent that affect the children. And this can be really damaging not only to the victim, but to the children as well. We know that children who grow up in homes where abuse is present are far more likely to either engage in abusive behaviors or suffer from abuse themselves later on in life. Privilege is another topic that we could spend a lot of time talking about. And we could talk about a lot of different ways that offending partners use privilege to accomplish their goal of gaining and maintaining power over victims in relationships. Using privilege in abusive relationships often looks like the offending partner trying to be the one who makes all of the decisions in the relationship or all of the important decisions in the relationship that affect both people or maybe the family. Oftentimes, offenders will treat their victim partner like a servant, someone who is simply around to provide them with things. Privilege often looks like financial resources. Maybe the offender is more financially well off than the victim is. Maybe the offender is more socially connected than the victim is, and therefore they have social privilege. Using social privilege can be hugely advantageous for the offending partner because they can perhaps discredit the victim partner who might disclose acts of abuse. Maybe the offending partner has connections with law enforcement or the criminal justice system or powerful people in whatever town or county they live in, and can make it difficult for the victim partner to find help in addressing the abuse that they've experienced. And finally, part of this power and control wheel is minimizing, denying, and blaming. These are behaviors that we almost always see present in abusive relationships when we work with clients here at the Friendship Center. This is classic abuser behavior. They cause harm to someone and then they minimize the amount of harm that they cause, or they deny that they did anything wrong or caused any harm in the first place, or they blame someone else for their behaviors, and that someone else is often the victim. Minimizing, denying, and blaming is perhaps the one thing that we've talked about today, the one part of this power and control wheel that I can confidently say to you exists in every abusive relationship. This is what makes a person abusive, is their inability to take responsibility for their actions and to try to do better next time. Every relationship is different, and every abusive relationship is different. And all of the things that we've talked about today that make up this power and control wheel look many different ways. And it takes some time in talking with victims and survivors of abuse to recognize the individual aspects of power and control that have affected them in their relationship with their abusive partner. Most of the time, we as support people are only going to be able to see bits and pieces of these behaviors. That being said, we all have the ability to recognize when something doesn't feel right to us. We all recognize when someone we care about is maybe not doing as well as they could be. The reason I've presented this power and control wheel to you today is to help you be able to better recognize when someone you care about might be experiencing harm in a relationship. I want you, as a member of our community, to be able to spot the signs of abuse. I want you to be able to recognize things that are happening and then offer support to someone you know. And the way we offer support to that person we care about is by saying something like, hey, I've noticed these things and I'm worried about you. Or that behavior or that thing I saw or that thing you told me causes me concern. I want you to be safe and to be happy and to be healthy, and I'm not sure that you are. Is there anything I can do to help you? That's the key to offering support to victims and survivors of domestic violence, is simply saying, what do you need? How can I help? And it's really important to remember that if we truly want to help someone get out of an unsafe or an unhealthy relationship, we have to continue to make that same offer over and over again. On average, it takes at least 7 times for an abused partner to leave that abusive relationship. And there are many reasons for that. I've covered it in a previous video, and we can talk about it again another day. But the really important thing to remember is that simply offering support once to that person you care about is not enough to make them completely change their life. You have to continue to be there for that person. Talk to them about the things that worry you. Tell them why you're concerned for them. And then ask them if there's anything they need, if there's anything you can do for them. Offer them a safe place to stay or a ride somewhere. Offer to help them when it comes time to make a change or to leave that abusive partner. Maybe offer childcare if there are children present in the home and you suspect that there is abuse happening. There are a lot of things that you can do for that person that you care about, but you have to let the victim tell you what to do. You have to let the victim be the one that makes those decisions about how you provide help for them. I hope it's been helpful for you to hear about these behaviors that we as advocates typically hear about from clients at the Friendship Center. I hope that this has made you more able to recognize when someone's in danger or in an abusive relationship. And I hope that you feel empowered to tell a friend or a loved one that you're worried about them and offer them support. Offer them any help that they may need at any time that they may need it. The way that we build a safer community where domestic violence happens less often is by being educated and offering support to people who need it. As always, if there's anything that we at the Friendship Center can do to help you or someone you know, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We have a staff of trained professional advocates who are wonderfully compassionate and truly want to help you and your loved ones be safe. Please check out our website. It's www.thefriendshipcenter.org. Give us a call anytime. We run a 24/7 crisis hotline, and our number is 406-442-6800. I hope this has been helpful information for you, and I hope that you're well and you're safe. From everyone here at the Friendship Center, thanks for watching.